Hi, I'm Chris Sarandon, and welcome to Cooking by Heart, where we revisit the vivid memories of the food we grew up with and the people and the stories attached to that time in our lives. Today, my guest is William Ragsdale. Ragsdale made his Broadway debut replacing Matthew Broderick in Neil Simon's Biloxi Blues, and continued in the same role for the national tour of its sequel, Broadway Bound, with Nathan Lane. He also starred in the movie Fright Night, a favorite of mine, and its sequel Fright Night Part 2, as well as the movie's Mannequin 2. On television, he starred as Herman Brooks in the 90s Fox sitcom Herman's Head, as well as Brothers Keeper, Grosse Pointe, and several other television series throughout the decade. He also has the distinction of being Ellen DeGeneres' last boyfriend on the ABC sitcom Ellen. He's a native of Dorado, Arkansas, a town founded in part by his maternal great-great-great-grandfather in the 1840s. He lives with his wife and 3 sons in Connecticut. I'm very happy to have my friend and colleague, William Ragsdale. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Hello. I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. When we do this podcast, I often start by discussing what some people in the hoi polloi call provenance, where you're from. But I can't escape this item in your bio that says that your maternal great-great-grandfather founded the town you were born in?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Yes. He was an early settler. He was a scion. His name was William Sterling Lacey. He was a scion of the famous Lacey's family of Virginia. Mm. And
so that's where he immigrated from.
Yeah. He was in Virginia, and he was a minister and stuff, and Presbyterian minister, and his wife passed away. So he needed a big change, and decided to go west, and he went to Tennessee, and he started. It was like missionary work. He founded these churches. He founded a church in Missouri, and he founded one in Tennessee, and I guess he finally settled in the town where I was born, El Dorado.
So Arkansas. Sorry, forgive me.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
You know. And so he settled there in the 1840s and founded a church. He founded the church that I grew up in.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
Pretty amazing. And bought land there, and I went to high school on the land that he owned when he first settled there.
Ain't many of us can say that.
Well, it didn't help my grades. You'd think I could have a little pull, but so that was kind of my claim to that area. That's where I ended up.
Yeah, and so the family remained there, obviously, from the 1840s right through the time that you were born. And so tell me a little bit about your folks. Tell me about your mom and dad.
Well, my mother was born in Hope, Arkansas. Mm-hmm. Actually, she her mother, my grandmother, was from El Dorado, and married a guy who was. This was during the Depression, so they moved around a lot, and they ended up at one point in Hope, Arkansas, and that's where my mother was born. But then they moved back to El Dorado. My grandfather passed away.
So your mom, it was your mom's side of the family. You said your maternal.
Yes.
Great grandfather.
Yeah, my father's side of the family was there too. They came in the 1840s as well from northern Alabama, but they bought a farm and started farming, and they did that for 100 years or so. So,
and what was your dad's business when you were growing up?
My father had a little corner drugstore, kind of like It's a Wonderful Life without the tragedy. And that's where I grew up, helping him out in the store. And so, and then my mother she was a church secretary for my growing up. And then when I went to college, she decided to go back to college, and she did. And she got her master's of social work and became a an administrator at a facility for people who had certain challenges and handicaps and things,
Right.
and that's what she did until almost the end of her life.
I'll be talking to Amanda Burse, whom I believe know.
I know her.
Yeah, reasonably well. And it's interesting to me that both your moms were involved in social work of a sort. Both went back to college, got degrees in social work and or whatever it's called. I think Amanda's mom's was early education, and worked with people in service to folks.
Right.
Yeah. Tell me about what it was like for you growing up. Did mom cook? Did dad cook? What was the food situation like? That's why we're here, of course.
Well, clearly you've never been to El Dorado,
No.
Arkansas, or you would know what the food situation is now. It's okay now. I think it's probably better now. But in the 60s and 70s, when I was growing up, there was nothing
Really?
there. I mean, there was I think we had an early Pizza Hut.
Ooh.
Maybe, but we never ate there, and that was kind of it. I mean, they had a McDonald's move in the mid 70s or something, and there was like a parade. They had like a parade, and ribbon cutting. The mayor was there, and all that stuff. So,
Who was?
I won't say it was a food desert. It was food rich, but it was
Right.
not. It wasn't restaurant food.
But what about at home?
Consequently,
What about at home?
yeah, we ate at home all the time. My mom cooked all the time, so she would go to work and work during the day, and she would come home around 4 o'clock or so whenever I got out of school, and she would start cooking, and it was all pretty much homemade stuff. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of canned or processed.
Oh,
food,
really?
I guess.
You're unusual
Right.
in that regard for that time, because generally, I mean, a lot of the people that I talked to, it was particularly if mom worked. There's a lot of stuff coming out of cans.
Right. Yeah, no, we had fresh cooked stuff pretty much every night.
And what were can you give me a little kind of tasting of what the family food table was like?
Yeah, it was comfort food. I mean, it was a Southern household, so there was always potatoes and hams and casseroles and things like that. And but it was creative. She had a rice and broccoli casserole. I think maybe had chicken with it too, which was excellent. And
Not made with any sort of canned additive of soup or anything like that, but made with her whatever she.
Yeah, well, she may have. Yeah, I mean, she may have used like a cream of tomato or a cream
Mushroom,
of
right,
mushroom soup,
which was
or something
popular
like that
then,
with
right?
it. Yeah. She was lazy. She wouldn't make her own.
She wasn't lazy.
Cream
She
of
was a
mushroom
working
soup.
mom. Come on.
Yeah, no, she but it was every night. We would have steak on occasion. She did. I mean, she did on occasion. My sort of nightmare was that she would cook liver. Because apparently this was the 60s and 70s, and liver was good
absolutely.
for you.
Yeah.
So, and it would. I remember being on the front porch at my house, and I could smell the liver from the front porch. So I would go over to my friend's house next door and get him to call to see if I could eat dinner with them. So she would call and he would call and say, "Yeah, we're about to sit down to dinner. Is it okay if we stay?" If he stays and
escape from awful or whatever it's called.
Oh, yeah. She would have liver and Brussels sprouts, in the same sitting, and it was just not
Talk about an olfactory festival.
Yes. Yeah. Can we add cabbage to that too, please?
Well, it was at that time, particularly, I mean, I'm going back to the 50s too, as well, when I was growing up in my dad's restaurant, but liver was a staple on the menu. Liver and onions.
Right.
But it was also really fresh because, as I've talked about it in a number of times on the program, my dad butchered everything. So he'd get a side of beef, he'd cut everything up for the steaks, the chops, the burgers, whatever. But he'd also have fresh liver. We also had there were also a lot of chicken liver dishes. I don't know if you guys had that, but we
didn't really. they were certainly available around, but I don't remember so much
chicken livers. No
liver.
They're much more. You can handle them more easily than a slab of liver.
Yeah.
But and in some places these items are a delicacy. Obviously, in our upbringing, I wasn't a big liver fan either.
No, it's just so pungent, and it was just like, oh, this is just too much.
And another theme that seems to run through a lot of my talks with people is tongue. Did you ever eat tongue when you were a kid?
Not that I know of. Maybe she disguised it.
Snuck some tongue into a sandwich at some point.
Yeah. I think that, it was a pretty nuclear family too. So whatever we ate had to get by Dad. And my dad I don't see him as being a tongue guy. But we had this little grocery store. It was sort of, I guess, the main grocery store in town. It was locally owned, and they had a real butcher section. So you went and told him what you wanted, and that's how you got it. It was not prepackaged at all. And that was, it was in the back of the store, and there was something a little macabre about it, I thought, because it's like, that's where you went for. You had to know what you were asking for and what you wanted, and it was. And there were things that
were you quizzed when you went in.
No,
the butcher didn't say. All right.
No. I mean, I never ordered. I didn't ask if they had tongue, but some things were recognizable and some things were not. But that's just being a kid,
exactly.
And I assumed it was all edible.
And did your mom have a specialty? Was there something that you remember particularly that you loved that you thought, oh, it's coming, I can't wait?
Yeah. Well, we would cook steak. Mm-hmm. She would grill steaks, and I always really enjoyed that because it was, I don't know,
meat.
I guess it's. Meat. It was meat. It's probably was really fresh.
Any idea what the cut was? I'm getting very esoteric here.
I think they were T-bones.
That was really popular back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And one of the things that I still buy, because to me, a lot of people think, filet mignon is like the primo steak. But to me, as far as flavor is concerned, it's T-bone and porterhouse, which are much more flavorful to me than a tenderloin, than a filet mignon.
Right, well, because the bone and the fat.
And my brother and I used to fight over the bone. After you cut away the meat, then we'd want to gnaw on the bone.
Yeah. I had the same thing happen with me and my dog.
Speaking of brothers, were there siblings? Did you have siblings?
I have two older sisters, yes, who are both still in Arkansas, both excellent cooks. My older sister, Elizabeth, was a sort of she went off to college in the early 70s and ended up marrying an artist, and they lived out in the woods in this cabin. So they opened up some avenues food-wise to me that
hunting, venison, that sort of thing.
Yeah. They had a friend. They had a guy who lived next door, a mile away, who was an older guy who'd grown up there, and he would bring them deer meat but also squirrel. They would eat squirrel meat, and that's not something you find in the butcher shop too often. But they had a garden, and they would, as did my parents, they had a garden. A lot of the veggies were fresh.
So your mom picked from the garden, or you did? Did you work in the garden at all?
My dad actually did all the gardening. The story, his war stories from gardening always involved a deer coming, and taking everything. So he had he had these sort of
for one of a
Rube Goldberg kind of devices to get rid of
like
deer,
what?
And one of them was he had a motion sensor that he attached to a radio. So whenever anything was around the garden, this radio would start blaring music. And he had a scarecrow that I guess was by the radio. So you were supposed to think
singing?
That this guy started singing, this farmer. this guy with a sack head started singing.
Did they
You
work?
know, that would be scary, I guess.
Did the devices scare away the deer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I I just had an image of a deer pulling up and going, I like that tune. That's very nice. I think I'll hang around, have couple of tomatoes. And
Is this a new song? Yeah. No, I guess it worked. I mean, he I don't know why he just wouldn't put chicken wire.
Yeah, that's what I do.
But,
I have a big, tall, like 8-foot fence, so they can't jump over it. But what came from the garden? Do you remember?
Oh, a lot of tomatoes is what I remember, because down there, it's hot.
Perfect
it's
tomato
humid,
weather.
So these tomatoes would just be monsters and gorgeous. I mean, and it's like you taste it and it's like, oh, that's what a
supposed
tomato
to taste like.
Because it was. And he had he grew a lot of cucumbers. He grew okra, and he would pickle his own okra.
I just got a frisson. A little. I just got goosebumps mentioning okra. To me, it's like hazelnuts. There's something about them that just. There's a visceral sort of thing that happens to me.
Is it a good thing or is it?
It's not a good thing. No,
it's not a good thing.
No.
Okay, because it's a hairy pepper, maybe. Or something?
No, it's the texture.
Oh, okay.
More than anything. You like okra?
We'll just have to agree to disagree.
Okay.
I really like okra. I make okra for my kids, and they enjoy
They love it.
Yeah.
Well, God bless them.
There's room for us all.
Dad with his okra fetish.
Maybe not a fetish. He also grew watermelons. Which sort of had the same kind of that heat and humidity, had the same kind of effect on it. So, so it's good. Those are really good memories. He tried corn, but those with the deer, that was really hard.
So, circling back to the table, what about desserts? Did Mom make desserts? Or Dad?
We weren't a really big dessert family. Occasionally, for special occasions, my grandmother made an egg custard that she had made for my dad, his mother. Used to make those for his birthday and occasionally at Christmas time. So that's the dessert I remember. And my mother would make a cherry cobbler, which was really, really good.
With fresh cherries?
With fresh cherries, yeah. And the ice cream on top.
Oh boy, yeah. We had those. We had those cobblers in my dad's restaurant as well.
Yeah,
peach cobbler, cherry cobbler, apple cobbler, plus the pies, all fresh made too, which was great.
That's fantastic.
Man, let me tell you.
But occasionally, like she had at some point growing up, she found out that she had high blood pressure, and so she had to cut out all the salt from all the food.
Right.
And I remember that was like traumatic because, she would bake a whitefish, which I can't even imagine what it was down there. And it would just be it had no butter. It was just a plank it was like paper. It was like wet paper, and because no salt.
Any kind of whitefish generally doesn't have much flavor to it anyway.
Yeah. And it was, at first I was like, this is terrible. This is awful. But my father encouraged me because Mom had to eat that way too. Let's make the best of it that we can. That's my okra, I guess you could say. It sticks out in me.
Do you still have a thing about whitefish?
No, because
you can salt it.
You can salt it and you can add things to it. You can, flavor it and bake it.
No sauces or anything? No.
On the fish?
Did you recall? Yeah.
Not then.
No.
Not then.
Now.
Now, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I think you probably know, I lived in New Orleans for a while. I had been there for many years. And they did this thing called they have redfish. They have all kinds of great seafood down there. They have they have a redfish thing called a redfish meuniere, which is like it's basically like a kind of breaded, sautéed with kind of a lemony cream thing. It's not a piccata, but it's really good though. It's just melts in your mouth, and it's got a little crust on it from the.
There's got to be some butter in there.
Oh yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. In a Meunière. Yeah, and I think it's as you say, it's probably lightly coated with flour or and then sautéed.
Yes. So it's got
and
a
then
crispiness
with the sauce
to
on
it. Yeah, it's not like a battery thing. It's a crispiness to it, which is
right. Yeah,
but
but
yeah. So and then we also I went fishing with my dad. We would have brim and perch and occasional bass and stuff, and those were generally fried. We would do like a deep fry or whatever deep pan fry of those
with a batter.
So a cornbread with cornmeal with a cornmeal batter. So it was crunchy and gave it just a little hint of sweetness, and it's really good. And that's also a main staple of church life down there too, or the fish fries. You have fish fries on Friday nights or whatever, and they were fantastic.
Oh, what was the menu like for the fish fries?
You would have catfish. You'd have fried catfish. You would have hush puppies. You'd have
describe a hush puppy to those in the audience who don't know what they are.
Oh, what? Who? What? It's a cornmeal ball that's put together with I guess probably egg or just water. It's like a.
Well, it's got to have some kind of a binder, so it'll probably be an egg.
And you put this cornmeal with it and spices, salt and pepper, and then you deep fry it. So it's kind of like a falafel, but with cornmeal.
Yep.
And it's very, very good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And what else?
They would have that. They would have those two things. They would have like those really fresh tomatoes, green tomatoes as well, and sliced onion and bread. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go now. Talk myself into it. So, but I mean, and that was a real draw for people.
Yes.
The church had other things going on as well, but that was.
And by the way, I just thought of it that catfish is very underrated as a fish. Very flavorful.
Yes.
It's a bottom feeder, and depending on where the catfish lives, generally very tasty, and can be adulterated, with sauces and what have you. I know my wife at times has made a dish with a catfish and an almond, a crushed almond coating. It's quite delicious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had it with, in New Orleans especially, they will do it with a cornmeal and a sort of a chopped pecan thing in the coating as well, which is really, really good. But I mean, catfish was one of the first farmed fishes, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's,
where did you and your dad fish?
We fished all over, really, in South Arkansas and North Louisiana.
So you go on trips?
Yeah, we would. Well, sometimes, Sometimes we would just go on his day off. He had like one day off a week, and then sometimes we would go on a 2-day trip over to. There's a place called Lake Chico, which is just off the Mississippi River, and it's actually an oxbow lake that is left over from the Mississippi. And we didn't really fish for catfish. That was kind of more. People would set trot lines for those things, things you just leave there. And then, but we fished for bass and perch and brim and stuff. But yeah, I mean, we didn't really go deep sea fishing.
Or you didn't go camping and fishing.
Yeah. No, it was more my dad's, we had the boat, he'd hook it to the car. We'd go out for the day.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah. Sounds wonderful. Well, you just described something called an oxbow.
Yeah, an oxbow lake is what's left over from like a river channel when the river will change course, but there's still this deep, channel there, and it becomes a lake. It's basically where a river turns into a lake. So
Well, this immediately sets me to going to Siri or to my online encyclopedia to find out what the derivation of Oxbow Lake is, because there's the Oxbow incident, that great book
yes,
and
yes.
movie.
Weren't you in that movie?
I'm not that old, Bill. I know.
Well, it comes from the shape of an oxbow, where you put over the
Yeah,
ox's
yeah, yeah. I understand that, but
head.
why is a lake called an Oxbow Lake? Is my
Because
question.
of its shape, I
Yeah,
guess. I don't know.
and anyway, we're off on a sidetrack here. Let's get
I don't
back.
want to court controversy here, okay?
Right.
Let's just call it a lake.
All the Oxbow aficionados in the country are going to come down online on us just right
Yeah.
away, right away.
The
So you're a kid. You are bringing food in from the garden that your mom cooks fresh. Grits, was grits part of your diet?
We would have grits, yeah, but they weren't like necessarily fresh grits. I don't know.
They weren't, and they weren't ubiquitous. Like, for instance, my dad's restaurant, they always served grits with breakfast.
Right? No, they were ubiquitous in the diners,
Yeah,
or
right.
wherever you would go. Find some place. The morning coffee shop places. Place. They would have grits, but I don't think we made them much growing up. My mother did make hominy.
Yes.
Once, and that was not a success.
Sort of chunky grits, balls of corn.
Like boiled, boiled popcorn or something. It was not it was weird.
All right, so now you have in your corner, I have okra, and you have hominy. So we're we're straddling a line here that in which we're respecting each other for our
right, our boundaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the boundaries.
Right. In your lifetime, since you grew up with this kind of fresh cuisine, but at the same time relatively limited in terms of its, did your mom make anything ethnic? Did she make any spaghetti and meatballs, or did she make anything? You smile?
Well, I mean, yeah, spaghetti and meatballs. Yeah, I guess that's pretty. That's mainstream at this point. Not really. We
Not
never.
adventurous.
We didn't have Asian.
Yeah.
We didn't have any Asian food around. We didn't have any. Really didn't have any Mexican or Latino food at all. The first Mexican food I had was a frozen dinner Mexican food, and it was terrible. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I hate Mexican food. I'm a guy. People say they like it. I hate it, and that was it until I went to college or something like that. And someone took me in Little Rock. Someone took me to a Mexican restaurant, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah. Exactly. Do you recall, as you grew up, any awakenings, things that you went, oh my God, this is other than Mexican? Was it just, you name it and it was an awakening?
Everything. Everything. Yeah. I went to, the first time I had sushi was with Amanda Burse, and it was before Fright Night. We were going to go look at the billboard on Sunset or something like that. And she said, let's grab something to eat first. So we went to a sushi place, and I thought, oh, we're going to a sushi place. I thought that was like haute cuisine or something, and it was delicious. And I thought, why didn't I know anything?
Yeah, exactly.
This? Fantastic. And so everything. I eat everything now. I have a good friend who is from Lebanon, and he's a great cook as well. He cooks Lebanese food and Mediterranean stuff, and I didn't have any exposure to that growing up. So, and it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of that when I was a kid, because my church, there was no Greek Orthodox church because there weren't enough Greeks. So the Greeks, the Syrians, the Lebanese, the Russians, actually the Serbians, they all kind of banded together and built a church, and the preponderance of the congregation was Lebanese Syrian. So there was a lot of
Okay.
that food around, and it's such an
Oh,
awakening.
that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it really is. I've had Kerry always talks a lot about Jordanian food. And he said that's, I
Uh-huh.
mean, it's, in the same world.
Yeah.
And he said it's just extraordinary. It's just really, the palate is very broad and quite delicious.
Right.
And I've been exposed to Moroccan food. There's a cross cultural kind of thing going on
Right.
there as well, and it's wonderful cuisine. I recommend it to our listeners very highly.
Right.
Speaking of awakenings, how did the acting start?
Oh, well, this town that I grew up in was it was a typical small Mayberry-like town, I guess.
Yeah.
Except in the 1920s, they found oil, and they drilled here and they found oil, and they drilled here and they found oil. So it became a boom town.
Oh,
It went from like maybe 5,000 people in 1920 to 1920. 27, 22, I think, to 50,000 people.
oh,
And almost, not overnight, but
yeah,
within months. And so a lot of people got very wealthy very quickly. And a lot of people from outside Dallas and more
Metro.
metropolitan areas came. And the Hunt brothers were there for a while, and and they brought all this money. And some of the ladies of the town decided that they needed a fine arts presence in the town, so they founded this little thing called the South Arkansas Art Center, which was an art center. It had sculpting classes, painting classes. It had a little ballet and an orchestra, and it had
an orchestra,
a little theater. What was that?
an orchestra.
Yeah, yeah. It was a community orchestra,
Yeah,
but
but
it was
still.
people who, it was a facility, and it was a place to play and give a concert and all this stuff. And yeah, so it was kind of remarkable. And my mother did art there because she was kind of an artist, and I plugged into the theater end of it.
How did that happen?
One night, my parents said, "We're going to go see The Wizard of Oz." And I said, "Oh, where is that?" And they said it was at the Art Center, and they were doing the musical The Wizard of Oz.
Ah,
And they did this musical, and instead of Munchkins, they had, which were very hard to find in South Arkansas, they used kids. And so I went and I saw the stage full of kids dressed up and adults dressed up and a little orchestra playing the music, and I just thought, well, this is where I'm
that's.
supposed to be.
How old
So
were
they
you at the time?
I was probably 9 years old, and my good friend Trip Phillips, who I don't know if you know, a guy I grew up with, who's a stage manager now in New York City. He was the mayor of the Munchkins, and so I went. They started the next year. They started a children's theater thing there, and I got involved in that, and that's when I started doing plays and living that in that world. So I was very fortunate in that it was it was a small town, but it had a big arts
Right,
presence.
and community based, which
And all
is
community based.
which
Yeah,
is
still is.
really extraordinary for the size of the town. But as you say,
Yeah.
because of the quote unquote whatever you want to call it, big city influence of people coming in
Yes.
from places like Dallas and Houston, where they had this
Right.
kind of as a birthright in a way, because those are
Yeah.
places where there are thriving theaters and have been there for a long time. Very well known, actually,
Yeah.
in both Houston
And
and
it's
Dallas.
yeah, and it was considered the rite of passage for a town once you got to a certain level of affluence. It's that you added arts and stuff to it, right? And I guess these ladies, and men recognized it, and so that's what they created. And they also felt like it was they discovered, I think, that it was a boon to recruiting people to come work in the town, for executives or engineers or all of that stuff, because it had a life outside of work, which, was huge. So I think it was kind of a component of the town continuing to thrive after that.
Yeah, and it's something I think that a lot of people don't really understand in it, particularly when it comes to schools' arts programs, and that is that it's not just about the kids participating in it, but it's also the way it leaks out into the community, in the sense that people have a way of catharsis, for want of a better word, of really going to something and seeing it and thinking, oh, well, that's me up there. I understand what it's like to be in pain, or just to sit and laugh and have a good time.
Yes.
You know? And that suffuses itself throughout the community. It's not something that just resides in the building.
Yes.
When you go to see a beautiful painting, or you listen to a great piece of music, and it's not in your home, it's with other people also, which is something that we're also starved from during the pandemic. And that is that sense of community. My wife, as you know, is an actress, but also a director. And she just came back from a film festival in which she got to see her movie for the first time on a screen with an audience. And she said it's just so different, because the audience feeds itself in terms of that sense of permission to laugh, to cry, to have that moment of yesterday, for instance, we went to a memorial service about a remarkable young woman who lived here locally, who had a terrible health problem, who ultimately died from it, but who was an artist, who was a painter and an actress and a singer, and throughout her life, despite whatever was happening to her. And there was a moment in the memorial where, believe it or not, Kermit the Frog came on, and somebody sang that great Kermit the Frog song, da 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 da, whatever it is.
The Rainbow Connection,
yes, the Rainbow Connection.
Okay, yeah.
And the audience as one went, that little breath in. Oh yes, this moment of we all feel the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah, that's
okay. So much for my diatribe. But I want to go on a little further. So then, when did it become clear? Was it clear to you early on that this was going to be your life?
No, I mean, I did it and I enjoyed it, and I got, positive feedback from it. But then I went to college and I thought, okay, well, I have to, I better find something to do. So, I looked at law. I took the LSAT, the exam, and I thought about ministry. I thought about medicine, and before I knew it, it was the end of my senior year, and I was like, my friends they had all gotten their acceptance letters for med school or law school or whatever, and I was like, what am I going to do? And my parents actually were the ones who sort of said, why don't you go give acting a try? You've gotten great feedback from it. We enjoy seeing you do it. You enjoy it. Worst thing that happens is, you do it for a couple of years, doesn't work out, then you can move on. They knew that your life does not end at 22 when you graduate from college and go into your job, So so they were very encouraging. They gave me, for my graduation gift, they gave me a year away at an acting school in California. So,
oh wow, how great!
So I cherish that so much more now than I realized then.
Yes,
but
yeah.
So I went out there and had great luck out there and was right into it within a year. I was a professional actor. So
and was working right away.
And was working, yeah.
Which is another extraordinary thing. I've talked to people. I had a conversation with Michael Patrick King, who's a writer, director, producer of Sex and the City and any number of the comeback. And Michael was in New York for 18 years, working as a waiter, as a baggage handler at Greyhound Bus, and all the time doing writing plays and doing improv and whatever,
Right.
but having to work at a job
Right.
the entire time until finally he got his first writing break when he was in
Right.
his 30s.
It's amazing.
I share with you that luck in the beginning of
Right.
just being able to work right away. So I salute all those actors and performers out there who struggle for a long time, but finally it happens.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I still know dozens of people in that, my age in that same situation. So to continue, to attach to this thing and continue to pursue it while, paying the bills and making ends meet with, jobs that are not what they may necessarily dreamed of doing. It's incredible. It's an amazing thing.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I would also be remiss because I know that there are probably a number of people listening to this who are also fans of the movie that we have in common. And if you're just listening and not looking at the video, there's a poster of Fright Night behind Bill. Can we? Let's.
Oh, is that there? I didn't.
By the way,
I meant to take it down.
Yeah. I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about that because it was such a great experience, I think, for me. And I have to ask you what it was like for you.
Yes. Well, I mean, it was as I was to segue right into it. I went to this acting school in California, and I was about to graduate from there, and the head of my school got a call from an agent he knew in San Francisco, who had gotten a call from a casting woman that she knew in LA, looking for scrawny, youthful-looking, boys.
Yeah, put the emphasis on scrawny.
Well, yeah,
you had to be
capable of being scrawny. I was capable,
right?
For the movie Mask, they were filming Mask, so I met the casting woman through that. Even before I was done with school, and when I got out of school, I was working shucking oysters in a bar, and I called the woman and said, "I'm going to come down to LA. Can I?" This is Jackie Birch, who cast Fright Night.
Right.
Said, "Can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you a drink? Want a coffee or whatever?" She said, "No, but I got this movie I'm doing now. You might be right for. Why don't you come in and read for it?" And that was Fright Night. And so I went and read for Tom, and it went well.
We're talking about Tom Holland, the director of Fright Night, and also
Tom Holland,
Child's Play and a number of other movies. Yes.
And he's a guest, wasn't he, on this?
Yes.
podcast?
Yes. Tom has done a podcast, right?
How does he feel about okra? I'm just curious.
I didn't ask him, but maybe we'll do a follow-up podcast just about okra. Yeah.
I'd add that to my list of questions. It's very telling. It's very telling. And so I went back to San Francisco, and I had this old beat-up Celica that I drove back 3 or 4 times to audition with in different situations with different people, and finally got it. And the rest is history. Now I'm talking to you for almost 40 years later.
Oh boy, that's crazy. So, and the experience itself lived up to your expectations?
Oh my God. Yeah. I was with Chris Sarandon and Roddy McDowall, who, were, icons for me at that point. So, and yet they were very nice people as well, very supportive. And, it was fantastic. I was, it was Amanda and Stephen and I were kind of these young,
neophytes,
upper comers or whatever. And then you guys, veterans, were there. So we were absorbing and watching and learning and, and listening to what you guys, how you negotiated through the making of the movie. And then of course the
tutorials that I gave you. Yeah.
Yes.
Where I sat and, sort of talked you through all your scenes and we're joking, folks.
Right.
that did not happen.
Yes. It helped to have you there being co-director. No.
Talk a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your impressions and your experience with Roddy McDowall.
He was, I wasn't really, when I read the script, I pictured, Vincent Price or Christopher Lee or one of these old sort of, uh,
But
legendary guys. And so when I heard Roddy was doing it, I was like, well, how's that going to work? Because I think of Roddy as Cornelius,
from the
or
Planet of
some of
the
the younger
Apes,
roles
yes, or
he
some
did.
of his movies when he was
Yeah.
younger. Yeah.
And, but he was perfect, I mean, looking back, he knew who that guy was so well, and he touched every single point, in the creation
Well,
of the
because
character.
what he
And
managed to accomplish was, and it's something that I think Tom had in mind, Tom Holland, the director, had in mind when he wrote the movie, and also when he was making it, and that was that this was a genre that he had great nostalgia for, that he loved, and so he was not interested in making fun of it. But at the same time,
Right.
he was exercising some of the tropes, some of the cliches of the
Yes.
genre, but having fun with them, but not making fun of them.
Right.
And that's an important
Right.
distinction, because a lot of movies were coming out at that time, or at least just previous to
Right.
that were satires of the genre, of the vampire genre. And Roddy's character was very much that sort of character. In fact, he was the epitome of that kind of character.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the brilliance of it, I thought, was that he's setting you up for a satire, and then suddenly it's not a satire. It's
Dead serious.
It's real. And then we all have to kind of converge at this point of it's real. What
the
do
stakes,
we do?
The stakes are very high, and I learned this with The Princess Bride, and that is comedy's very serious business. And that there are a lot of comic moments in Fright Night, but that they are all taken very seriously by the director and the cast. And that's important.
Right.
Very important.
Yeah, they pop up as opposed to being sort of the main thrust.
Exactly. I would be remiss if I didn't return to our original theme of food when you were younger, but to ask you a question that I ask everyone as a kind of conclusion to our conversation. And that is, if there's one thing that you remember from when you were a kid, one dish, one food event that just stands out in your memory, what would it be?
Well, my mom cooked every night, so there were a lot of things to choose from. But the thing that leaps to the front of my mind is Thanksgiving dinner, because it was things that only happened at that time of year, and they were things that were really special in terms, cranberry sauce and the sweet potatoes and the massive turkey and homemade rolls, and people would. My grandmothers would bring things to add too, bean casseroles or whatever. So, but it was that was the real time. That was the time that it was a family feast, and it was everybody.
Members of your satellite family as well, not just your brothers.
Well, yeah. My grandmothers, but all my sisters. I mean, my sisters were there, obviously, growing up. But yeah, and sometimes there would be people from. It happened on certain Sundays as well. My parents would invite someone who was maybe by themselves, an older person by themselves, to come in and have the Sunday lunch, Sunday dinner with us, and those were very special too, because it felt like a special meal. It felt like a kind of a sacred.
Yes,
sacramental meal.
Well, and also that if you're not only doing it for your family, but also that somebody in the community is part of it, and that you are giving them a home, in a way, for a day.
Yes.
Then what better?
Yes.
What better can you do on a holiday than to share it with somebody?
Yeah, and it was the food, obviously, but it was also new stories, because we didn't have the TV on during meals. We would talk, and when you had a new person there, it was suddenly, here's a new story, here's a new relationship or something, and that was I loved that too. That was really special.
Well, I can't think of a better way to conclude our conversation except to say to you, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there something you cook that you consider to be your specialty, or your family considers it to be so?
Well, I have 3 teenage boys.
Yep.
So I cook for the family, and I cook whatever they will eat.
Is there something that they request?
They request black bean burritos all the time. So I make them black bean. I soak the beans.
From scratch.
Make fresh black beans and mash them up, and then we put all the fresh stuff on it. The onions or tomatoes or jalapenos or whatever they want on that. So that's what they request, but I don't know if it's not terribly exotic or interesting. But
do you consider that your specialty?
What I like is what my grandmother made for me, which was it's a tortilla chicken casserole. And it's basically it's a lined dish. You line it with tortillas. You put in chicken and rotel tomatoes and cheese and some mushroom soup, or cream of mushroom soup, and you just sort of layer it and you let it soak overnight in the fridge, and then you pop it in the oven, and it's just, I don't know what you would call it.
Well, I have a feeling that that's going to be the recipe I ask you for the Cooking by Heart website.
It's great for kids; they love it. It never lasts, and everybody eats it.
That's the one. That's it.
And you can add anything to it you want, which is great too.
Okay, William Ragsdale, I can't thank you enough for being with us today on Cooking by Heart. It's been a wonderful, stimulating, fun conversation. Thank you, Bill.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, too.
I'm going to make something for you and bring it to you.
Oh, it's a deal. All right.
I'll make you the casserole. See how you like it.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks, Bill.
All right. Bye. Take care.